Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking at something a little different. We usually cover like historical biographies or scientific journals, but today we're tackling a self-improvement book.
Yeah.
The kind that promises to unlock your full potential and all that.
So many out there.
Right. But what if instead of those vague promises, you had like a practical framework, a roadmap for actually making changes?
A blueprint.
Exactly. That's where the 5C's for change come in from this book. And trust me, it's not your typical self-help fluff.
Yeah, right off the bat, this book kind of throws down a challenge. It argues that change isn't some mystical force. It's like gravity, a constant, undeniable force. The question isn't if you'll change, but whether you'll be in the driver's seat or just along for the ride.
Oh, I love that analogy. So are you shaping your life or letting life shape you? Let's dive into the first C. Confident. Now, this isn't just about like feeling good. It's about getting real with yourself, like really real.
Yeah, the book really stresses a deep, honest self-assessment. Not just surface stuff, but a true dive into the 5 core areas of life. Physical, emotional, intellectual, social, and spiritual. It's about recognizing where you truly stand, even if it's uncomfortable.
It's like finally cleaning out that cluttered closet. You might find some skeletons, but you'll also free up space for new awesome stuff. The book actually compares complacency to a stagnant pond. No flow, no life, just murky water.
And here's where it gets fascinating. The book delves into psychological fixations. Ever known someone stuck in childish behaviors as an adult? Or a parent whose anxieties hold their child back? We all have these to some degree, these patterns that no longer serve us.
Yeah, it's like an outdated operating system on your computer. Might worked fine years ago, but now it's just slowing you down. Identifying those fixations is step one. So we've faced ourselves in the mirror, admitted we need to change. Now what? That's where the second C kicks in, competence, knowing HOW to change.
Now, hold on to your hats because this is where the book gets into visualization. Not just like wishing for things, but using the power of your mind to actually rehearse success. You're essentially training your brain, creating neural pathways toward your goals.
Like those Olympic athletes who mentally rehearse their routines over and over. They're not just daydreaming. They're priming their minds and bodies for peak performance.
The book even points out that the ideal times for this mental training are 15 minutes before and after sleep. Those hazy alpha wave states where your subconscious is most receptive. It's like planting seeds in fertile ground.
Speaking of training, remember Demosthenes, the ancient Athenian orator? He overcame a severe stutter by practicing with pebbles in his mouth, shouting against crashing waves. Talk about turning a weakness into a strength.
What's so powerful about that story is that it flips the script on how we view our limitations. Instead of feeling stuck with them, what if you could transform them? This brings up an important question for you listening. What hidden talents are you neglecting? What could you achieve with dedicated practice?
So we've built up that inner confidence and figured out how W to change with competence. But something that really struck me in this book is that idea that our surroundings, our environment, plays a huge E role. It's like the third C, communications, letting others know about your intention to change.
What's brilliant is how the book compares this to an agriculturist carefully surveying the land before planting. You wouldn't just throw seeds anywhere.
Right.
You'd assess the soil, sunlight, everything. Our environment, both physical and the people around us, are like that for personal growth.
It makes me think about those studies on how our social circles impact our health habits. If your friends are all marathon runners, chances are you're more likely to lace up those sneakers too. But it goes beyond just mimicking. It's about actively creating an environment that supports the changes you want to make.
Think about it. If you're trying to quit smoking, surrounding yourself with smokers is going to make it 1,000 times harder. But if you tell your friends and family, ask for their support. You're not just changing your own habits. You're influencing your environment to support your success.
It's almost like building a team. Right. And speaking of teams, the fourth C is all about cooperation. Now, you might be thinking, I'm trying to change myself. What's teamwork got to do with it? But this is where the book gets really insightful.
We often think of self-improvement as this solo journey, but the truth is, we're social creatures. Think about the success of groups like Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not just about individual willpower. It's about shared experience, encouragement, that feeling of, we're in this together.
It reminds me of that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Change can be scary. And facing those fears alongside others who understand makes it less daunting.
What's also fascinating is how the book uses historical examples to illustrate this. Imagine the sheer manpower it took to build the pyramids or the Great Wall of China. Those weren't solo efforts. They required immense coordination, leadership, and a shared vision.
Which makes me think of Alexander the Great, a leader obsessed with conquering the world. His ambition was fueled by his army's belief in his vision. But when that unity crumbled, so did his empire. Cooperation, even when there are bumps in the road like conflicts, can be a powerful force for achieving big goals.
And that's a key point. The book doesn't shy away from the fact that cooperation doesn't mean a conflict-free utopia. It's about how you handle those disagreements. It stresses clear communication, clarifying misunderstandings before they escalate. Think about it. So much drama in life comes from assuming we know what someone else is thinking instead of just asking.
It's like that saying, assume makes an ass out of me. So much conflict could be avoided with a little curiosity and clarification. Instead of letting things fester, speak your mind, listen actively, and seek to understand different perspectives. It's about creating a culture of open dialogue, where differences can be discussed constructively.
And here's something that might sting a little. Learn to listen to criticism. I'm not talking about negativity,
Sure.
but genuine feedback from people who want you to succeed.
It's like having a coach who can spot your blind spots, push you beyond your comfort zone, and help you refine your game. Think about top athletes. They thrive on constructive criticism from their coaches and teammates because they know it makes them better.
It's about seeing feedback as an opportunity for improvement. So when someone critiques you, try to take a deep breath and see if there's a nugget of truth you can learn from. The book even suggests thanking your critics for their honesty, because they're taking the time to help you become better.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, built inner confidence, learned how to leverage our environment and the people around us. Now comes the part where the rubber meets the road, the fifth and final C, creation.
This is where all that preparation, all that inner work finally translates into tangible results. And the book has a clear message. Action beats inaction every single time. It's about overcoming procrastination and taking that first step, no matter how small.
The book makes this amazing analogy of launching a satellite into orbit. It takes immense energy to break free from Earth's gravitational pull, but once in orbit, the satellite effortlessly glides through space. It's like that with any new endeavor. Getting started can feel overwhelming, but once you overcome that inertia, momentum takes over.
But even with the best intentions, staying on track requires discipline. It's about making choices align with your goals, even when it's not easy. Think about trying to adopt a healthier lifestyle. Choosing the donut over the apple is tempting in the moment. But discipline means making the choice that supports your long-term well-being.
It's about delaying gratification for a greater reward down the road. And the book emphasizes the idea of unfreezing old habits, consciously replacing them with desired behaviors. It's like thawing out the frozen lake. It takes time, consistent effort, but eventually the ice gives way to flowing water.
Imagine you have a habit of negative self-talk. Every time you catch yourself putting yourself down, consciously replace that thought with a positive affirmation. Over time, you're literally rewiring your brain to think more constructively.
It's incredible how our brains can change and adapt. Even in adulthood, it's like we have this superpower to reshape our thoughts and behaviors. But so often, we forget to use it. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the 5C's for change. And, as we've been exploring these concepts, I've been thinking about how they apply not just to personal growth, but to any kind of transformation, even on a larger scale, like in businesses or society as a whole.
That's a great point. The principles behind these 5C's are surprisingly universal. Whether you're talking about one person changing their habits or a whole company shifting direction, the core dynamics are often very similar.
Yeah, for example, that idea of radical self-assessment in the first C, confident. It's just as crucial for a company to take a hard look at its strengths and weaknesses as it is for an individual.
Absolutely. If a business is clinging to outdated methods or ignoring changes in the market, it's like that stagnant pond we discussed earlier. No flow, no growth, just eventual decline.
And just like we can get stuck in those psychological fixations, companies can develop what you might call cultural fixations, ways of doing things that were once successful but now hold them back.
It's a classic case of what got you here won't get you there. Sometimes to evolve and thrive, you have to let go of what's familiar and embrace new ways of thinking and operating.
And that brings us to the second C, competence. Having the skills and knowledge to navigate change effectively. That's just as critical for organizations as it is for individuals, especially in today's fast-paced world.
You need to be constantly learning and adapting to stay ahead of the curve. It's like that Red Queen's race in Alice in Wonderland. You have to keep running just to stay in the same place.
I love that analogy. And it's not just about technical skills. It's about developing what the book calls change agility, that ability to be flexible, to pivot when needed, and to have a mindset of continuous learning.
Exactly. Now, the third C, communication, is absolutely vital for any successful change. And I think this is where things can get really tricky, especially in large organizations. It's so easy for messages to get lost in translation or for different teams to work in silos, which hinders collaboration.
Yeah, it's like trying to build a house where each contractor is working from a different blueprint. Chaos.
That's why it's so important to create a culture of open communication where everyone feels heard and valued, where feedback is welcomed, ideas are shared freely, and there's transparency about the reasons behind changes. This helps build trust and buy-in because change is often met with fear and resistance.
And speaking of working together, the fourth C, cooperation, is all about that. The book highlights how even when we're focused on personal growth, we're not meant to do it alone. We're social creatures who thrive on connection and support.
Think back to those historical examples we discussed, those massive projects like the pyramids or the Great Wall of China. They required incredible collaboration and a shared vision to succeed.
It makes me think about how, even in competition, there's often a lot of cooperation happening behind the scenes. Like in sports, you have individual athletes striving for personal excellence, but also working together as a team to achieve a common goal.
Exactly. And the book reminds us that cooperation doesn't mean the absence of conflict. It's about learning to handle disagreements constructively through clear communication, active listening, and a willingness to see different perspectives.
So it's not about avoiding conflict, but about using it as an opportunity to grow and learn together.
Precisely. And finally, we come to the fifth C, creation. That's where the rubber meets the road, where we take action and turn our intentions into tangible results. This is where that concept of unfreezing old habits and refreezing new ones becomes really important.
It's about actively shaping the change we want to see, not just waiting for it to happen.
And it requires a willingness to experiment, to step outside our comfort zones, and to embrace the possibility of making mistakes along the way.
Because sometimes those so-called mistakes are actually valuable learning experiences that lead us to even better solutions. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what's one key takeaway that you hope our listener will take to heart?
For me, the most important message is that change is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. It's an opportunity for growth learning and for creating a life that's more aligned with who we truly are. And while it can be challenging at times, it's ultimately a journey worth taking.
Beautifully said. And for you listening, we'll leave you with this final thought.
Yeah.
What one habit, if changed, could have the biggest positive impact on your life right now? Think about it. What small shift could create a ripple effect, leading to bigger and better changes down the line? And remember, you have the power to make that happen.
You're not a passive bystander in your own life. You're the architect of your own transformation. So go out there and create the change you want to see.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep creating positive change in your world.